My name is Papa Li'i, Dr. Failautusi Avegalio. I'm the director of the Pacific Business Center program at the Scheidler College of Business Administration at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. The only advice I would have is, especially people who are visiting, to try to share their wisdom and their knowledge and their interest in our people, is that Samoans, Pacific Islanders in general, are initially more concerned about how much you care rather than how much you know. So normally when you engage our people, the first thing they're interested in is who are you, where are you from, what is your family, and things of interest. And then what is secondary is, what is your technical background and why are you here on a professional basis? Well, the work I've done here isn't so much my work as it is the work of my staff. We deliberately recruit and select the kinds of individuals that we feel can make the most meaningful impacts and establish the kinds of relationships that are essential to meaningful economic development. And we look at behavioral attributes and characteristics, not just the knowledge and technical aspects. And I think by our emphasis on that, we've been able to become very effective in the things that we do and very successful with our relationships with our people. Well, our relationship with the National Emergency Grant is one with a discussion we had with Evelyn Vaitotolu Langford. She's the government authorized representative for the American Samoa government. And she was appointed shortly after the 2009 tsunami disaster that struck Tutuila Island. And through a conversation with her and through references from officials from different government agencies and federal agencies, we wanted to initiate a relationship, a working relationships as soon as we could, to provide the kinds of technical support that we're capable of doing. Well, first of all, the Pacific Business Center program, it's sort of like a broker program. We're housed in the College of Business Administration, but we serve under the Vice President of the University of Hawaii. So we are a systems program, not a campus program. As a result, we have access to the entire system's technical capabilities through the School of Architecture, Engineering, Information Technology, Tropical Agriculture. We have access to the entire system. We can then pull it together as needed and customize it to the specific needs here in American Samoa, for instance, or anywhere else in the Pacific. The primary concern at the time was post-disaster economic recovery. And we as an independent program cannot provide that by ourselves, but we representing the system of the University of Hawaii can. And so that's how that relationship started. It's my home. And anyone whose home has been affected as drastically as the disaster affected American Samoa would have been moved to tears, and of course would be very anxious to do whatever they can to reach out and provide assistance. So I think the greatest benefit I felt was that I was, due to a set of interesting circumstances, was already part of the College of Business at the University of Hawaii. So having a champion within the system, I was able to advocate, promote, and encourage the engagement of the university and its various massive resources to assist in our effort in helping the island recover. First of all, you need to have jobs before you can start engaging and investing in job training and developing a job policy. The most essential first step is either massive investment encouraging investment and American or other industries into the territory, or look for economic opportunities elsewhere. It's ludicrous to train people for jobs when there are no jobs, but you can train people for jobs if you can identify where those jobs are. And the concept of expanding the village beyond its territorial boundaries to include the entire Pacific, I think provides a more realistic perspective on how to solve these kinds of problems and challenges. The perfect example is wherever you find someone, communities. They're in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, they're in Guam, they're all over. Much like, where do you find Chinese communities? There's a Chinatown in almost every city in the United States. So there's a bit of China, there's a bit of everything, and many of these cultural and ethnic groups establish themselves. So in the same token, we need to look at American Samoa's boundaries or our village boundaries to expand to wherever Samoans are, because then it provides that much greater space to look at greater resources and greater opportunities. They're not here. Well, it's not so much tightening the links as building on the links. The links have been established for many years, and circumstances will define the value of those links. We have a disaster. Our economy has been devastated. There are no jobs here. So what do? We start changing our perspective of the boundaries in which we have to work within. We have communities in California, in Hawaii, in Guam, and places of that, places dispersed all over. And I think building upon those relationships and those connections was the most practical thing to do. Culture is fundamental. When you develop a process, if you don't design culture into it, then it's outside of it. And I think when culture when people are alienated from traditional or normal cultural practices, you cannot effectively engage their greatest potential. They're involved in too many other issues of trying to adapt, trying to adjust, etc. But building on culture and then designing it into a process that can contribute to meaningful employment and development is the most practical thing to do as far as we're concerned, and we've seen it happen, and we continue to support it. I think very fundamental, there are a couple of people that I can cite. Franz Schrampenaar's Riding the Waves of Culture, Gert Hofstede, Culture and Its Consequences. These are very eminent people who study cross-cultural communications. Edward Hall is another one. And all of them have pointed out that the cultural factors in something as basic as simple communications, perceptions of relationships, perceptions of how one associates oneself with the environment, the earth, in the universe in general, those are very, very compelling influences in a person's behavior. So people that do not understand that may just look at the job descriptions and looking at personnel policies that basically focus on efficiencies, on behavior, so that they can get a job done within a certain specified amount of time. You're also dealing with a dominant culture that's highly individualistic. Its policies are individualistic. Its work designs, its organizational designs are individualistic. Fine, it works for cultures that are individualistic. Samoans are Polynesians, like many of the Pacific Islands people. We are not individualistic. We are collectivist. We work very well in teams. We understand clans. And work design should be designed around working teams, not individual that work independently from one or another, because that's the nature of our culture, that's the nature of our history. And that's the nature of what defines us and our successes through time immemorial. Total quality management, quality circles, collaboration, shared decision-making processes. I was amused because at the College of Business, when we listened to these lectures, it would seem as if they were introducing a new idea or a new concept or a practice. I'd usually raise my hand and say, excuse me, I don't think it's so much new as it's reaffirming ancient traditional wisdom in much of this, the Pacific region, and most of the world, I would imagine. In many instances, for example, when you have different department heads come together, and they come from, and if they're not usually at the university, the first initiative is to establish credentials, achievements, and individual representation of a discrete or specific aspect or part of the organization, society, or the industry. I always found that interesting because what that does is that engenders feelings of I'm special and I'm different from you. In the islands, the protocols usually engage initially with humility and respect. When you initiate and engage with humility and respect in meeting new individuals or people who are part of the collective or who are part of the meeting, that generates a totally different kind of energy. Because when you approach somebody with humility and respect, they have an intuitive sense of responding back in kind. And so when that occurs, then you find the collaborative process works very, very effectively. And until those particular virtues are involved in the process, this banding about the collaborative process will continue to escape those who wonder why it doesn't work. Because you have to start with a fundamental human sense of decency and respect for the other person. And also, it takes maturity to humble yourself, even though you may consider yourself quite loftily. But when you do that, we've learned by living in small, limited environments, by traveling in small voyaging canoes, if we cannot get along together, and if we don't continue to sustain these practices, our survival becomes at risk. My greatest hope for American Samoa is that we build on our strengths, that we work towards reducing our reliance and dependency on those things that are more wants than needs. I think modern technology has provided a means in which we can start looking at using the gifts of the sun, the waves, and the winds. We can look at our breadfruit and the fruits that we grow on the land, so we can look at agribusiness so that we can provide valued products that can be used for export. They're highly nutritious. We can look at ways in which we can build a society based on the fundamental virtues of our ancestors, which is grounded in basic human respect, balance, harmony, and giving back in full measure. Giving back in full measure is a value that we have forgotten. It simply means when you take from the land, you give back in full measure what you've taken. If you take from the sea, you do the same. From the sky, when you take from your fellow man, you give back in full measure. When that occurs, you're able to establish balance. And when balance is present, harmony is just around the corner.